This is the Pulsebeat. It's said that every inspiration starts with a spark, and we're here to ignite a fire. Join us as we showcase conversations from esteemed experts in a multitude of specialties. You'll find experts discussing topics that stimulate, inspire, and encourage. From the famous and familiar to the lesser known, the Pulsebeat will be your go-to for stirring up a sense of truth and optimism. A podcast that pulses truth with every interview and story, bringing hope into dark places.
Welcome, everybody, to another wonderful segment of our wonderful Pulsebeat podcast, where we bring these wonderful people from all over the globe to teach you, to educate, inspire, and most of all, to give you a different perspective on how to stay healthy, what to do sometimes to take your health to the next step, and also some of the secrets and the nuggets that people have been able to learn and have been teaching for a long time. And one of my favorites is Dr. Josh Hillman. And I actually asked him if he wouldn't mind giving the whole enchilada of his background, because to me, it's so impressive. You know, those of us that have been in the health industry, we might have just one little segment. Maybe you're an RN, maybe you're a DO, maybe you're, what have you. But Dr. Josh, you've had such a wild and incredible vitae and background, and you just keep learning. And now here you are, you're down there by Hippocrates, which I spent a lot of time down there. That's where I actually originally met you years and years ago. We won't tell everybody how many years though.
Yeah, okay.
We're here to talk about anti-aging today, but maybe you can start off with sharing everybody a little bit about yourself.
Sure thing. Yeah. So basically, my name is Dr. Josh Helman. I have 2 degrees from Harvard, 2 degrees in biochemistry, and where to start, right? I mean, I started off as one of these science nerds when it really wasn't cool to be a nerd, and ended up going into medicine, started off in surgery, trained in emergency medicine. I'm double board certified in both emergency medicine and lifestyle medicine. I'm licensed in 14 states in the United States. And for the last dozen years now, my focus has been on reversing aging and also reversing Alzheimer's. So as you mentioned, we originally met a long time ago at Hippocrates, which is a raw vegan retreat in South Florida, in West Palm Beach, Florida. And since then, I went on to work at a fasting center, True North in Northern California. Also worked for about 6 years at Spinago Clinic, which no longer exists, but it was basically, we reversed dementias, Alzheimer's dementia, Lyme disease, mold toxicity, petrochemical toxicity. So I've got a strong background in basic science, biochemistry, but also a strong background in traditional emergency medicine. And that because I, for a couple of decades, traveled in 14 states around the country, working shifts. And my focus now is reversing Alzheimer's and reversing aging in general. So to be honest, yes, I've done a lot of things, and I guess we could spend a half hour just talking about my background. But I mean, you're right. I've done a lot of things, but for me, it's natural. I'm curious. I'm like a sponge. I want this information. And now that I've got this information, I want to share it with the general public, which is why I'm so glad, Lisa, that we've stayed in contact. And now we have these technologies where we can share.
Oh, that's fantastic. When you think about can you share just a little bit about lifestyle medicine to become certified in that? What is that? Because, I worked I was in trauma and ER for 24 years. And I'm telling you what, we did a good job of picking people out of ditches and patching them up and restarting their hearts. But we didn't do a lot when they left that room or when they went up to the floor to teach them on how to stay healthy. So this is fascinating to me.
Yeah, so the focus of lifestyle medicine is to actually, I would call it prevention, to do the way you live your life so that honestly, you hopefully don't need a doctor, you don't need an emergency room, you don't need a hospital, because you're if you're doing the right lifestyle things like eating the right foods and exercising and reducing your stress and having connections and getting enough sleep, if you're doing all those things correctly, you're actually and taking smart supplements, you can reverse your biologic clock. So, and it's cool. We think about all these different diseases, whether it's Alzheimer's or cancer or high blood pressure. I mean, you name all these chronic diseases. The one thing they have in common is most of them get more frequent with age. So if you can actually turn back your biologic clock, in many cases, you can prevent them from even happening. But
I like what Dr. Northrup often says. She says, we can't prevent aging, but we can prevent getting old.
Right.
That says it in a nutshell. I think sometimes it's a psychological thing. You reach a certain age and you think, oh, I need to act my age, or I can't expect too much out of life when I reach a certain stage, or, society has given us, just like they give us the food pyramid, which is all messed up. They give us the idea of when we should enter into Medicare, or when we should enter into Social Security, or when we should retire, which I think is a bunch of hogwash.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for. I want hospitals and emergency rooms to be there when we need them. But the whole point is, for my decades working in hospitals normally are not a fun place to be unless you're dealing with a healthy childbirth. Normally, people don't look forward to going to the hospital, and but unfortunately, the existing system is biased towards, frankly, waiting until you have a chronic disease, and then and only then will we try to throw medication, surgery, and other things at it. And the point of lifestyle medicine is, no, you got that backwards. Why not start with prevention first and decrease the amount of hospitalization you need? And lifestyle medicine is a new specialty. It was just recognized by the American Board of Medical Specialties. So it's gradually getting a foothold. And I think just like emergency medicine was pushed for by the general public, I think the general public is getting frustrated. They don't like waiting for their doctor's appointment, and frankly, they don't want appointments. They want to just be well.
Right. No, you're exactly right. And one thing that when we have talked before about anti-aging and keeping your body in a state of homeostasis, right? I mean, the body's always going to strive for balance no matter what we do. And so what I think is fascinating about your journey is not only have you gone through this, this transformation in your own life, but now you're here and you're actually educating and teaching people on the next steps. Many times we see people and individuals because people become attached to, let's say right now it's like cryotherapy, right? Everybody's into cryotherapy. Well, tomorrow it will be something else. So what does a typical day look like for Dr. Josh? How do you maintain, your health? Because you're incredibly healthy.
Yeah. So for me, one of the keys is exercise. I try to exercise every single day. Now, I'm not perfect. There's some days, I'm back here at Hippocrates, it's like a new place, moving, all these things. Sometimes the exercise is moving heavy boxes.
Yeah.
So, and exercise is beneficial. You get your heart rate up, you get sweat, which gets your toxins out. You focus on balance. It's an amazing thing. So exercise is key. And I'll be upfront though, if there's a day when I don't exercise, I take a prescription medication called metformin, which reverses some of the biological aging pathways, these ancient energy pathways. But I don't take it on the days that I exercise because there's studies of metformin in humans showing that people on metformin don't form muscle as well as when they're not on metformin. Yeah. So I figure, hey, if I'm not going to get good exercise today, at least let me rev up those pathways.
That's great. So how many hours a night do you sleep?
Now, I aim for 7 or 8,
Okay.
and I think it's important for people to understand that it's not just the time that you are in bed, it's the quality of your sleep. You need deep sleep in order to recharge your brain and decrease your risk of getting Alzheimer's. When I did an analysis of hundreds of different patients, the biggest risk factor for developing Alzheimer's turned out to be poor sleep. So this is
Wow.
really important. And this, I certainly didn't learn in medical school 30 years ago. In fact, it was like a macho thing, to stay up all night taking care of patients and then try to function the next day. And, sometimes you could, sometimes you couldn't. So I think it's kind of ironic, but working in emergency rooms, night shifts, that's like some of the worst things you could do to your
I
body.
know.
And you look at the quality of food available in hospitals, certainly in the middle of the night, unless you're bringing your own quality food, you're not going to be eating anything good on your shift.
No. And you know what? I remember a time I was working nights in the ER. I was raising my children. I was drinking pots of coffee. I was training for a marathon at the same time. And I look back and I'm thinking, what in the world was I thinking? And it was almost like you said, a badge of honor. Oh, I almost slept 2 hours last night or 4 hours last night. And I'd watch these young interns come through and they would come in all spry and they'd leave with their tail between their legs going, boy, this is hard. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
So sleep is really important. How about the quality of food? Is it a raw food diet or is it there's a lot of people are into this carnivore right now.
Yeah, I think number one, the most important thing is to avoid processed foods.
Yes.
And then number two, I'm a big believer in plants, and as you mentioned, raw. I think you definitely want raw nutrients. I mean, I'm not 100% raw, but I love raw food. I'm probably close to 80 or 90%, especially working at Hippocrates, where I've got 20 different types of sprouts available. Basically whenever I want. So,
and you got the wheatgrass juice bar that's open 24 hours a day.
That's there too. But let me just be upfront. I'm also a big fan of fruit, of whole fruit, not processed stuff. But if it's out of the, coming out of the ground or a tree and you eat it in its natural form, normally it's good for you. And especially if it's ripe. Ripe fruit is amazing.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
And it has a certain energy to it. We have so many times when you look at the average American diet. I just spent the 4th of July, in an area of the country where they had $5 stores, family dollar stores within 10 miles. And I'm thinking to myself, what is the average diet of these people around these dollar stores?
Oh, Lisa, I thought there was breaking news here that instead of being called dollar stores, they're now called $5 stores.
Oh! That's the economy for you.
Inflation. Okay.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. But that's the diet, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
it is. The diet is key. And another piece of this, and I know it's controversial, but based on my reading of the literature and taking care of patients and, my 2 degrees in biochemistry, is you want to avoid adding salt, oil, and sugar to your food. And that's one reason why processed food is not good for you, because normally it's loaded with all 3 of those things.
Right. You're right. So even like adding like a coconut oil or olive oil or avocado oil, would you stay away from those oils?
I personally would, but if you are going to use those oils, the damage it does to your blood vessels is a lot less if you eat it with some whole vegetables or things with fiber. So, it's when we're talking about diet, a lot of it, the studies, how do you study it? A lot of it's comparison, right? That sure, olive oil is going to be less toxic than eating butter, but you probably don't want to add that, unless, there are some patients who are cachectic and need to gain weight. Sure, I might suggest eating some avocados and high calorie dense food. But the average American now, unfortunately, 2/3 are either overweight or obese. So, yeah.
I just saw a picture. You've probably seen these too, but I saw a picture at a beach. They gave a picture of a beach, people at a beach in the 1970s, and then a picture of people at the beach now. It's quite shocking, and it's very sad. Because,
100%.
and then you look at the amount the food that European countries and the things that they reject, and those are the things that we eat.
True, and there's also portion size. There's the American portion size, which is, the all you can eat,
Right.
Have a huge plate or bowl.
Yeah.
And then going over to Europe, it's not the same way there. But it's not just the food and the food quality, it's also the toxin levels, I think, are much higher. And when I say toxin levels, I mean pesticides, PCBs, forever chemicals, and unfortunately, those chemicals are fatty, and they tend to be higher the higher up you go in the food chain. So if you're eating animal products, you're getting normally 10 times more higher amounts of these fatty chemical toxins that stay in our body 10, 20, 30 years or longer. So it's just devastating. So that's why I recommend people eat from the bottom of the food chain, plants, as opposed to the very top.
Oh, that's very wise. I mean, you've advised thousands of people. So from an aspect of the Alzheimer's and the dementia, I just read a report last week that it's climbing and it's going to be epidemic proportions. And I'm unsure, you would probably be able to know better than myself, but is it because they mentioned post-COVID, the vaccinations, the isolation, the food source, we're missing, we're really lacking in good food source. And then, of course, pharmaceutical meds and the lack of movement. What do you typically do when you put a patient on a anti-Alzheimer's diet?
Yeah, so an anti-Alzheimer's diet, the first thing is you want to take out the processed foods. You want to take out anything that is shelf stable, that can sit on a shelf at a supermarket for a month or a year. You normally don't want to put that in your body. So that's number one. Number two, as I mentioned, you want to cut out, along with that, the salt, oil, and sugar. And number three, you want to focus on eating whole foods that have antioxidants, and you also want to make sure you have omega-3s. But going back to Alzheimer's, it turns out the underlying causes, there are 30 to 100 underlying causes. Some of the big ones are toxins, but another big one is poor blood supply. It turns out the brain has the highest blood vascular supply of any organ in the body. And if you've got clotted arteries going to your brain, or actually the blood vessels within the brain, if they're not delivering blood, oxygen, carbon dioxide exchange, if that's not going on normally in the brain, that is definitely one of the risk factors for Alzheimer's. And you're right, that the numbers are increasing at a devastating pace, going up exponentially. But the good news is there's some simple things people can do.
Yes.
Eat plants like beets that are high in nitric oxide. Nitric oxide, as many of the people watching know, it's just one nitrogen and one oxygen atom stuck together. It's a gas, but it's an exciting gas that opens up blood vessels. Now, as we get older, our levels of nitric oxide in our blood vessels goes down, but you can bring it back up by eating leafy greens, beets. And that's frankly one of the reasons why I'm a big fan, and I've been taking Cardio Miracle for 6 years.
This is a great time to talk about our sponsor for this show. Cardio Miracle has been around. John started this product 14 years ago. You've known John a long time.
Oh, yeah.
But he just added 3 new ingredients, the glutathione, the NAD, and the lion's mane, which I believe fits perfectly into what you are teaching and educating. But you talked about blood flow. So can you talk a little bit more about how Cardio Miracle works in your body, and of course crosses the blood-brain barrier to work in the veins and the arteries in the brain?
Yeah. So again, what I love with Cardio Miracle is there are over 50 ingredients there specifically designed to increase the amount of nitric oxide, not just when you take it, but lasting at least 24 hours after you take it, as opposed to if you eat some leafy greens or eat some beets, beet juice, something like that, that's only going to increase the nitric oxide level for between 4 and 6 hours. So, I want 24 hours of coverage.
Yes.
And here's another tip. I like to take the Cardio Miracle right before I exercise because I get a boost of energy. And frankly, I get a better workout because I'm getting, blood vessels are opening throughout the body, not just the brain. So I'm getting more blood going to my muscles, to my heart, to my lungs. It's just a much better workout.
That's incredible. I know Robert Scott Bell, he has broken all the records in his age bracket and at the gym. And he said it actually started after he started taking the Cardio Miracle. And he does just that. He takes it about 20 minutes or a half hour before he exercises.
Yeah, and for you science nerds out there, we understand why nitric oxide is so important for reversing biologic age. There are 3 basic biochemical energy pathways that are primitive. They're conserved from animals, from us, frankly, down to yeast. I mean, and plants and everything in between. For those taking notes, it's the AMPK system, sirtuins, and mTOR. We're not going to go into how those pathways work. Apart from to say is if you can increase your nitric oxide, you're going to optimize those 3 pathways and turn back your biologic clock.
Amazing. Amazing. So the average person walking on the streets has no idea what you are speaking of. They back in the day, they were getting vaccinations. They were remember back in the day when we would go to school and they give us that fluoride tablet? And we had, maybe you didn't, but we had to put a fluoride tablet in our mouth and swish it around. And, you think about what they had us doing when we were younger, around our age, and now how the adults are handling it. But I really believe, just like you just said earlier, is that we had better nutrition back then and we could handle some of these insults to the body.
Well, but we also have much higher levels of toxins now than 50 years ago. And one reason why is once these forever chemicals, PCBs, DDT, once that gets into the human or actually any food system, it works its way up so that, for a child that's being born today, they've often been exposed to 9 months of these chemicals while they're in gestation. Right. So it's a big problem. So, you can't really compare yourself to your grandparents and say, well, it's exactly the same. No, we're in a different toxic environment, which is why I'm so glad that John decided to add glutathione to the product, because glutathione turns out it's the master detoxifier for the mitochondria in all the cells in your body.
Mm-hmm. Now, the last time we visited, you mentioned the red light. Can you talk a little bit about the red light therapy?
Sure. I mean, the exciting thing about red light therapy is that, how I talked about nitric oxide helps those 3 pathways?
Yes.
We also have evidence that red light therapy also hacks and helps those 3 primitive pathways. So I love how it's like this is like a big puzzle, and we're trying to put all those pieces together. Yes. And but I'll give you another piece. The fact that John's decided to add lion's mane, that is so cool, because especially for someone like me who's helping patients prevent and reverse Alzheimer's, we know that lion's mane, number 1, promotes the growth of new neurons in the brain, and number 2, it helps with plasticity, which means plasticity of synapses, which means it's a lot easier for those new neurons to form connections.
Right. Oh, that's fascinating. And the thing is, if we could only get this in the hands of every single person out there, at least they can start somewhere. Like I was mentioning, we were getting the fluoride tablets, we were getting the Flintstone vitamins. I mean, the things that we grew up with, but now don't you find that there's a new awakening out there, especially with the young people? I think the young people are looking around and going, you know what? I'm finding that there's a lot of people my daughter's age that are homesteading now. Like they're interested in growing their own food. They have chickens. And it's so delightful to watch these young kids and young people pick up, essentially where our grandparents left off.
Yeah, and if you watch movies from 50 years ago, people back then were pretty tough.
Yeah.
We want to go back to that era of toughness. So I'm just curious. We've covered 2 of the 3 new ingredients in Cardio Miracle. Remind me the third one we haven't talked about yet. Which one? NAD. Yeah, and I'm glad you talked about NAD, because it turns out that NAD also, unsurprisingly, will also help those 3 primitive pathways. So we got you covered.
We got you covered. I mean, so what would you say if someone, we're going to talk about dosing for just a moment. So if you have someone coming in like, myself, I had malignant hypertension, had no idea. And I thought I was doing everything right and started taking the product. And within 3 days, my blood pressure was normal, which I was pleasantly surprised and excited about it. So I, to this day, I have to take 2 to 4 scoops a day just because of my energy level and what I'm doing on a daily basis. What would you suggest for the average person? And then if they're maybe having some challenges now with the new products and the new ingredients in the product, maybe with any lack of or lessening of brain activity, maybe that will be really helpful if they increase the dose.
I agree with you, but I like people to start at a low dose.
There you go.
Because you don't know how you can react. It's very biologically active. And most people, or many people, will get a flush right after they take it, because the nitric oxide is opening up blood vessels. And that flush normally goes away within a minute. But I like to warn people so that they're not like, what was that? I'm allergic. No, you're not allergic to it. It's actually working.
Yes.
Just like when I started taking it 6 years ago, I was like, my hair's growing in faster. Like, what's going on? I mean, so the cool thing is it'll affect every tissue in your body. But I advise people to go low and go slow. Start at 1 scoop a day and then build up. So you mentioned malignant hypertension. There's some people with bad high blood pressure that may need 6 scoops a day, or even more. But I wouldn't start there.
Yeah. I'm pretty tough.
Yeah, but
he talks about it as being whole, just food. She says, this is your food, your solid food base, and then add to it if you wish. But it's probably very logical to start off with smaller amounts. I mean, we've had some pretty surprising testimonials. We had one guy that was just taking half a scoop a day. That's all he could financially afford at the time, and he ended up having an absolute exquisite experience.
That's great. And the other thing is, if you've got a doctor prescribing blood pressure for medications for you, the interesting thing is, and you start an aggressive amount of Cardio Miracle, you may need to come down off your blood pressure medications too. So every case is a little bit different. I know part of the Cardio Miracle challenge years ago was, lowering your cholesterol with it. So if you happen to be on cholesterol-lowering medications, you might need less of those medications, for example.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I know we're up on our half hour here, and we've kept you from everything you're doing there at Hippocrates, and we're so excited. We have some amazing events coming up, which I'll get to see you in September. We're going to be doing more filming. But any closing words that you'd like to share with everybody?
Yeah, I'll just summarize that the exciting thing about Cardio Miracle and nitric oxide is we have the potential to reverse our biologic clock, which will reverse potentially chronic diseases, whether we're talking about high blood pressure, Alzheimer's, cancer. That's why it's so exciting that we can reverse the biologic clock with these 3 basic biochemical pathways. And I like to share it with all my patients. And one last tip I'll leave is that if you actually look and see where the nitric oxide is produced in the body, half of it's produced in the mouth, half of it's produced in the gut. So what I want you to do is when you take the Cardio Miracle, swish it in your mouth before you swallow. That way you're going to maximize the nitric oxide production in your mouth. Not that if you don't do that, it's going to hurt you. You're just not going to get the full benefit of the product.
Great. That's great. Well, I sure appreciate you. And I know that if anybody's listening today and they're not running out to get it, and I know the code is Dr. Josh. So if anybody would like to order the product from this, this show, please do so and use the code Dr. Josh. And also, when you just talked about, one product being able to handle all those challenges and, getting off the aging train with Cardio Miracle, that's pretty exciting. So again, thank you, Dr. Josh, for everything you're doing. And exciting.
Sure. And I'll put a plug in for my own website, which is very easy. It's just drjosh.com, drjosh.com, 6 letters. You got it.
drjosh.com. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
and
Lisa. This is a lot of fun.
Excited time to be alive, and looking forward to everything that you're doing down there at Hippocrates.
We'll do this again soon. All right. We'll see you soon.
God bless.
All right. Bye-bye.